Okay, great. Welcome everybody to our case collaboration on creating a coaching agreement to partner with our clients. We are being recorded and today is February 20th, 2019. My name is Christine Shiverick and I'm the Programs Committee Chair, and I welcome you to our case collaborations, and it's nice to see so many new faces. Case collaboration is a free opportunity for our members of ACO, and our goal is to provide connection and an opportunity to share perspectives on ADHD coaching approaches. If you're a guest today, thank you for attending, and we encourage you to join ACO as we hope to expand the programs committee offerings to some other collaborations that you could take part in. So let me start the slides. Sorry guys, it's really hard to. Am I not sharing, Emery?
No, not yet.
All right, there we go. Yeah, okay, because I've lost complete control now of the
Join us.
of the call, so I can't see anyone's hands raised or anything. So I'll rely on Kay and Krista
Great.
to do that. So before we get started, I just wanted to announce that our case collaborations do meet the third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m., so mark your calendars to join us. For those who can't see the slides, our upcoming topic for March is powerful questioning and direct communication with students, and April's case collaboration is powerful questioning and direct communication with adults. Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't think any of us can see the slides right now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you see them now?
I think there, yes.
Okay, sorry. All right, here we go. Take two. Our ACO programs coming for March are powerful questionings and direct communication with students. And April's is the same, but for adults. And as a committee, we decided to devote an entire call for each population, since often coaching students is very different from coaching adults. So we're also thrilled to announce a joint venture with ACO's research and programs committees. We'll be looking at Dr. Russell Barkley's latest research and how we might apply it to our ADHD coaching. The link for sign up is currently up on our website. It occurs February 27th at 10 a.m. Another quick reminder is the chat recordings are still available if you go to eventsbisbo.com, events.bisbo.com. One of the drop-down bars will give you a link to the conference recordings. If you were present at the conference, you can buy the 63 sessions on a 2 GB drive for $70, and if you were not at the conference, the price was $95. Unfortunately, you can't buy individual sessions, so you have to buy the complete package. If you don't catch this link right now, when you send in your opening and closing word for your CCEU, please just put a note in and we can send you that link in an email. So our goal for today is learning together. And in order for everyone to be able to participate and get good sound, we request that you mute your line. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, there is a bar, and you can mute yourself by clicking that microphone. And you can also unmute yourself there as well. You can also find your picture and click on mute if you hover over your picture, you'll then see the little mute button there. Because there's so many people on the line, we ask that you participate by raising your hand or typing in the chat box. And you can raise your hand when you see your name along with everybody else's, well, I guess first of all, you have to find yourself at the bottom of, I'm sorry, so let me go back. So in order to raise your hand, you're going to go back to the black bar at the bottom of your screen. Click on the participants, and a panel will open at the side of your screen so you can see your name along with everyone else on the call. Once you see that, you'll click on your name and you will see that you can raise your hand. Any questions so far? All right, so today's opening word is working, W-O-R-K-I-N-G, working, and you're going to email that to cceu@adhdcoaches.org within 24 hours to receive your core competency. That is a new email address that we've been using probably for about 5 months now. So again, it's cceu@adhdcoaches.org. For today's case collaboration format, Anne-Marie will facilitate our group's conversation on the topic of creating a coaching agreement to partner with our clients. There's just a quick note that typically we structure this hour by first exploring the month's topic and then bringing in case scenarios. But this month, we thought we would do it a little differently and blend the theoretical with the practical, inviting you to bring your own experiences with clients on creating coaching agreements throughout the conversation. So I am going to then hand it over, oops, as soon as there we go, to Anne-Marie. And you're muted, Anne-Marie.
There we go. Woo-hoo. All right. So I encourage you to participate today with the thought of challenging yourself to experiment this week with something new you hear today, or maybe to tighten up something that you used to do and you've kind of slipped out of using over time. It's actually been kind of fun as we've been preparing this and in conversation and working through some of these, some of the topics that came up around agreements. And it really brought a refreshed perspective to the work that I do with my clients. So, you know, I encourage you to dive into the fun too. So in a moment, we'll look at the core competencies from ICF and PAC that address creating agreements. But before we dive into like the particulars, to get started, we'd like to hear your thoughts about which aspects of this topic kind of stand out for you. Like, what do you include when you consider creating agreements with your clients? So random words are fine. We're painting with a broad brush here to get started. So you can raise your hand or put something in the chat. So when you think about agreements, what does this include or cover? Honestly, it was something I hadn't really thought about in a long time, because I'm like, well, I have an agreement. You know, when you start with a new client, you sign it and make sure you're on the same page. But then as we started to talk and dive in a little deeper and look at the competencies, we're like, oh, yeah, that's right. There are more aspects to that than I consciously think about all the time.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, we have some in the chat. Adela said accountability. How will you check in? Joanna said, I try to get agreements on what the client wants to achieve. Dale said, the agenda. Brooke said, discussing sessions overview, goals, plan of action. Kristen, the liability for coach. Michelle, how do you want me to be? What do you want me to say when you're stuck? And Kathy had confidentiality.
Yeah, all of these, what a great start. So as you can see, there's a lot to consider here. So let's see what guidance the ICF and PAC competencies give us. So on the next slide, we've got them written out for you. So I know there's a lot of words here, but if you're just kind of scanning through, what stands out to you? So this is the ICF core competency as it's written in their big list of 11. What aspects are covered here that were just brought up in our group conversation?
Brooke said reaches agreement. Joanna said the ability to understand what is required. How deep does the client want to go in understanding the meaning of their focus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like it's really addressing that aspect of the agreement that happens at the beginning of a coaching relationship, kind of that big picture that you establish at the very beginning. So interestingly, on the next slide, we went a little deeper into ICF and we looked at the PCC markers. And I mean, you know, when you're doing a one-off and you're being evaluated for a credential, obviously they can't really assess how you set up the original partnership. So this really addresses more of the in-session content that one person brought up. So is there anything here that stands out to you? Maybe anything that's a surprise?
Ruth raised her hand. Go ahead, Ruth.
Hi. I wanted to just comment on the previous slide. I was surprised that a part of creating the agreement had to do with the whole aspect of determining whether there's a good match between you and the client. I just didn't. I take that very seriously, but I don't think about that as being part of an agreement. But it's definitely part of that first meeting, you know, when you're engaged in that agreement setting. So that was a new thing for me. I was surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. That surprised me too. And on the next slide, something that made me go, huh, was things that make you go, Number 4, where it says the coach helps the client define what the client believes they need to address or resolve in order to achieve what they want to accomplish in the session. So I've always kind of approached that when we're creating actions or deciding action steps, what might get in the way, but I never really thought of it as, okay, we're setting up what you want to accomplish in this session. What might need to be resolved before you can move into accomplishing what we're doing right in this time together.
Right.
Yeah. So that's been kind of neat to play with. I did have a client that I introduced that this week, and it was interesting to explore that with them. There's one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Michelle has her hand raised.
Hi. I was just thinking about that too. Yeah, it's funny to have that as part of the agreement, but it seems funny because I think sometimes we think of the agreement as being this thing up front, as opposed to an evolving agreement, that we're always changing, that it's always a new agreement depending on the circumstances. And every session, I guess, it's an interesting way to think about it, as every session being an opportunity to make sure your agreement's on track and make sure you're honoring the agreement and making sure you're changing it as needed.
Right. And then even to take that further, you mentioned the ongoingness of the agreement. Even within the session, that's addressed with number 5. The coach continues the conversation in the direction of the client's desired outcome unless the client indicates otherwise. So that to me speaks of something really fluid, right, in the course of the session. I mean, and especially, I mean, I think as ADHD coaches, this is of particular concern to us. So I'm wondering how you might see ADHD making an impact on this particular part of the competency. Any thoughts?
I know Ruth has her hand up. Do you want to go ahead or? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was still up. I could make a quick comment though. I think that's a really fascinating thing to consider. A lot of times when I'm working with a client with an ADHD brain, they start off with the issue that we've agreed to talk, and then we go down some other rabbit holes. And I feel like my role is to simply reflect back that I'm noticing that that's what's happening, and then ask permission to say, well, is that where you truly want to go, or would you like to move back to where you originally said? You can certainly choose to make that shift, but kind of calling them out as to this is what I'm noticing and getting their agreement to proceed or go back to where we were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a couple of chats saying that, how to keep a client on track when they might not even realize they're off track, as far as that ADHD piece. And then asking the client, are we still on your agenda, or do you want to change the agenda? And then somebody else brought up the coach, let me just actually, hold on. The coaching insistence on having an agenda and sticking to it is the biggest value for the ADHD client.
It's good modeling, that's for sure, right? Because we're modeling how to maintain one's focus.
Yeah, and then Kristen raised a question. She's currently in training through WCI for her ICF certification, and they really concentrate on this, and she's wondering about that. She hadn't heard of doing this for each session, but for ADHD, I think it makes even more sense as things come up daily.
Or hourly.
Or hourly, correct, yeah. And then somebody else said, my clients rarely have an agenda and we need to go over the goals. Yeah, so I do think that that's a big part of of bringing them back.
Yeah.
Andrea, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Kristen said. The whole idea, I guess, in my mind of this coaching agreement, it's something that starts with the enrollment process. And from that very first conversation we have with them, we're developing coaching agreement. Here's what coaching looks like. Here's what it's about. Here's how we need to work together. And it continues then with that first conversation, and it continues every single conversation we have with them. So there's always that, what are we agreeing to focus on today? And someone else brought up something really important. I don't remember who it was, sorry. But the idea of checking in, which I think is one of the most powerful coaching tools we have out there, but we fail to use because we can oftentimes go off with our clients on things, but constantly checking in. Are we still focusing on what you wanted to be focusing on today? Is this conversation still continuing in the direction that you wanted it to continue in? And it all is part of the coaching agreement, because that shows us, or it shows them, that we are truly in their corner and we're there to support them through this relationship.
Yeah. Although I just want to, of course, add a little twist in there and something else to consider. I think all that's been said about really sticking to that agreement and continuing to check in. Okay, are we heading in the direction you want? Are we shifting direction? Here's what I'm noticing. All of that's really important. I've come to realize with my clients over time too, that sometimes it's really helpful to stick to that agreement. And especially, you know, if it's a person who knows that they tend to go off on tangents, we have an explicit conversation about how I might interrupt or bring that to their attention in a way that they're okay with. Like, we reach a common agreement about interrupting when it's appropriate and when they just need to go. Because I have certain clients too who don't have any other space where they can just talk out loud. And sometimes that verbal processing is exactly what they need in the moment. So we talk about that very common experience of just needing to let things go for a while, and sometimes connections appear, and that's the key to the breakthrough that they've been kind of stuck on. So there are times where it's appropriate, and we decide as partners, we bring awareness to what's happening. You know, is this a time for some verbal processing? Where are we going to cut it off? And, you know, how do we proceed forward? Sometimes when there's not a lot of clarity, it can help to just kind of talk, get some stuff out of the way, and then get that clarity from the processing.
And Marie, there are a couple of comments that said, one of them, I'm going to kind of go backwards, said, I have some clients who will say verbal processing is their, you know, agenda. And oops, sorry, I was trying to scroll my, and another participant said, most of my clients also have a very hard time coming up with their agenda for the session. I always ask a couple of times at the beginning and then resort to the goals if they can't come up with something on their own. But, you know, I think, you know, as another participant raised the question, it's like how to get the client's agenda when they don't even know for themselves at times. And I think Adela has her hand raised.
Hi. One thing I find that works for me and works for my clients, in addition to going back to their big goals, their long-term goals, is simply asking them, what do you need to accomplish by this time next week? So we're meeting on Wednesday morning. So by next week, Wednesday, what do you absolutely need to have done? And that gets the conversation going. And then usually it's like, oh my goodness, I have to do this and this and this and this. And how am I ever going to get that done? And then we have a very clear agenda for that conversation.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to also bring up Brooke's comment, because I do think it's really important. What about when you're doing academic coaching? It's really hard to create and keep an agenda. I feel sometimes for me it becomes a delicate balance between consulting and coaching at times. And I do think, and that's I think part of the reason why we're separating students and adults for the next two, because I do think that you know, when we're doing academic coaching, that it is a little bit of a delicate balance between that coaching and consulting. And I do agree. A colleague and I, you know, have a conversation about this quite often, you know, when we coach kids, you know, where is that balance? So I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah. Melanie says the agenda draws the boundaries of the field of play, lets us know if we are in or out of bounds. Sometimes defining an agenda is the agenda. So I like the visual.
Yeah. And Kristen mentions in the chat that she has a script from WCI that they have to practice every session. She's happy to make a copy and send to the group later. Of course, it's just a starter, but it's the basis of the per session coaching agreement. Kristen, that's awesome. Actually, I'm hoping that as tools are shared, if you wouldn't mind just sending them with your words for the beginning and the end of the session to, oh gosh, Christine, what's that?
It's cceu@adhdcoaches.org. Yep. Yeah,
just send it to me there. I'll compile the list and I'll share it with everyone. That would be great. Thank you, Kristen.
Absolutely. Okay, Kay has her hand raised.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I've started doing. I wish I'd done it a long time ago, is at the end of sessions, our next steps. You know, we define those, also what are your next steps? And then I do a summary, actually a written summary. It's kind of a lot of work, but it's helped me and it's helped them, that I have that in front of me the next time we meet. So that kind of takes us, and I ask for celebrations, and usually they're like, I don't know. So then we can go to next steps. And well, how did this go? How did this go? How did this go? So that kind of keeps us on track, and it brings the agenda back from where we left off. So I like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very nice, Kay. Thank you. Rebecca, I see your hand is raised.
So I have been very frustrated with my feeling like my inability to get an agenda for the session, for each session. And while we all were talking right now, it just occurred to me, I'm sorry to say, it just occurred to me how many executive functions are required to come to the session with a created agenda.
Yeah.
So in regular coaching, it's expected that the client's going to show up and they're going to know what they want to work on. But I just started listing a few of the executive functions like working memory, planning, prioritization. I think it can go on and on, emotional issues, to get them to be able to verbalize what it is they want to work on that day. So it's helping me see the situation a little differently when it feels frustrating and difficult. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And with you saying that, it reminds me that as we've been preparing for this, I remembered I used to use a pre and post coaching form that people could fill in that really helped keep us on track because it kept everything top of mind. And I fell out of use because I had a string of clients in a row where it just didn't appeal to their modality, their learning style. So I just kind of forgot about it, out of sight, out of mind. But I've resurrected it this week with a couple of clients that it would suit them for, or would suit their purposes. And it'll be interesting to see how that as a tool can help us, stay focused, even if they don't write on it. But even if they have the questions in front of them, even just 5-10 minutes before the conversation, it kind of sets their brain to, what is the focus I want? It just kind of gets the pump primed. So
yeah, that's a great point. I have a client who fills hers out. I do use that I send it like the first couple of times, and then when they don't use it, I stop sending it. But with students, I would usually, because they're usually here with me, I put it in front of them. I just print it out and set it in front of them and ask them to spend the first couple of minutes just looking at that. So you're right. I sort of forgotten that I do that as well. So
yeah.
Great.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up the executive functioning, because on the next slide, we've got the PAC competency.
Yep. Anne-Marie, can I just interrupt for 1 minute? Because I want to get to Ruth before we get to that next slide.
Yep. Sorry, Ruth.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that in terms of the creating the agenda challenge with college students, I always go back to the initial goals, but sometimes that doesn't really get us to something that really has a lot of energy behind it. Sometimes what I do is I say, would it be helpful to hear what some other students have been working on? Since oftentimes in academic calendar, other students are concerned about some of the same deadlines and timeframes. And so I reel off some real and created on my own types of things that students have been spending time in coaching doing, and that often then says, "Oh, yeah, that'd be really good," and they get a little more excited about a particular focus for the coaching.
Yeah, and Ruth, I think that's such a great point. I actually created a menu. Like that you fold up, and it gives like a list of topics that are kind of common to students. And so I can always pull that out, because sometimes they just need to see it to be able to say, oh yeah, right, I'm not doing that. And that's really kind of what I need help with right now.
That would be helpful.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for bringing that up.
So in the PAC competency, I really appreciate how, this is number 3 for PAC. I really appreciate how they put all of the agreement related things together. Where in ICF, they kind of divided up, the particular ones per session are sprinkled throughout the other competencies. But PAC seems to have put it all together with the overall coaching agreement, the specific session, and then they also make explicit mention of attending to the ongoing goals and the ongoing partnership that you co-create as you go. Like Michelle said earlier, like it's a living, breathing relationship, right? So we continue to check back in, not only with the goals, but about how are we in this together? You know, how can I best support you? You know, what would you like me to do to support, you know, accountability? Or, you know, when I notice this, how would you like me to bring that to your attention? So what catches your attention on this list? Again, there's, you know, a bit here to go through, but as you just kind of skim, are there certain things that catch your eye or catch your attention?
Anne-Marie, this is Christine.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the reminder that it's the client's ultimate responsibility for his or her decisions and producing results. You know, I often say I can't want it more for you than you want it for yourself at times. And I just think that that's so important that that's kind of verbalized, that, you know, that our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole, and that it's, you know, ultimately they're going to get out of it what the work they put into it. Because I think so many people come, especially with students, and they're there because their parents want them to be there. And, you know, when we're creating kind of that agreement with, you know, the parent, you know, as part of that, it's managing their expectations also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see several people have their hands up. So let me just, Kay.
Well, I like number 4 because so many clients come to you and say, I want accountability. I need accountability. I want you to, you know, and I've found that oftentimes those are the ones that are the most sensitive about it. And so I think to really early on have that conversation, you know, how do you really want me to support you in that aspect? I know Anne-Marie mentioned one time, you know, just to kind of dig down and say, well, what does that, you know, what would be most helpful for you? What does that look like? And I often even times talk about our sensitivity and, you know, how important it is that I'm not, and especially sometimes with students, that I'm not the nag and not your mom. How can I really support you and keep us on track? So I think that conversation is really helpful so it doesn't get off to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Adela, what do you have to add to that conversation?
I think point number 5 struck a chord with me, because very often the session ends and sometimes I'm disappointed or the client is disappointed because we weren't able to resolve the issue in just one session. And sometimes it's something very simple that, you know, they realize, wow, it takes time to plan. I was hoping that we would be able to plan out this whole project in our session, and we couldn't. And that's rather simple, but sometimes there's a lot more in there. So I don't know what my question is. I don't. Maybe someone has more insight or experience as to how to end a session with a sense of success, of more success for the client and the coach.
Especially when you're in the midst of some of the meatier goals.
Right. I mean, your hour is up and the next person is calling. So what do you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Michelle, we'll go to you first, and then Krista, and then Andrea.
So first, to answer Adela's question, I was thinking about how I like to do takeaways at the end of a session. And so whether you've resolved the issue or not, there's usually still something for them to take away. In regard to the competencies, I was actually really struck by the whole thing, how it's short, direct, and specific, more so than the ICF ones. And it feels like it's really, the whole thing is just designed for the ADHD coach, the ADHD client, and regarding a previous part of our conversation, I like the number 2. It says understands that the client may not always know what he or she wants, and so that it's very ADHD specific. And although frankly, I think that's true of any client too. A lot of regular, non-ADHD clients can come to you and say, I don't know what I want to do now. But I just like the specificness. It feels like it recognizes a lot of what we deal with, and and gets to the the logistics, the fees, the scheduling, like all of that's in here, which wasn't in the other. But that's a significant part of what I think our agreements generally have too, like to be upfront and for them to know how it works and what we're charging and all of that.
Yep. Michelle, I love that. And Kristen kind of echoed that as well in the chat. The part about the client not always knowing what they want stands out to her, I think stood out to a lot of people, because it kind of does, as Kristen said, it kind of sometimes feels like I didn't do well, as a coach in that session, like they're just floundering around. But it's nice to see it actually in print here. And know that as coaches, we're not alone, right? It's that this is, it's right there in the competency. Absolutely.
But I just want to add before we go to another, just really quickly, that stood out to me too, especially in light of last month's call on curiosity. And so this is a place where I think that there can be this natural temptation to step into the role of expert rather than curiosity when the client doesn't always know what they want. It can be tempting to start directing rather than exploring with the client with a sense of curiosity.
Absolutely. Somebody asked that they hadn't heard of the PAC coaching competencies. So if you just Google search PAC coaching organization, I forget the exact. I
think it's PAC.org, Christine.
.org. Yep, they are right now revamping. They have a whole new board, and they provide credentialing like ICF does, but for ADHD coaches specifically. But they have a whole new board, and they are starting to do, I think, a speaker series and other things. So if you Google search that, and we can also possibly, if you send in your CCEUs, Anne-Marie, if we can maybe remember just to put the link there as well. Krista, go ahead.
I think to kind of piggyback on Adela's as well, with students, I notice that lots of times when they're floundering, it's because they're overwhelmed. And so it's like their brain is just in 50 million places because there's like so much going on. And so I think sometimes towards the end of the session, just slowing it down and going, there's so much going on, but what's the one thing that you could work on this week? So kind of just bringing them back to just focusing on one thing rather than all the overwhelming things.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. Andrea.
I just wanted to touch upon 2 things. One thing that Michelle said and one thing that Adele said. Adele mentioned getting to the end of a session, feeling like you haven't gotten done yet. And that's where the benefit of check-ins come in. So if you're constantly checking in during the session, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times, are we going in a direction that's working for you? Then you're always going to make sure that you're accomplishing something during the session that they can walk away with, because they're in agreement the entire time with what's going on. And Michelle brought up the topic again of the, I don't know what to discuss. And clients show up like that all the time. And it just takes me back to something Barb Luther said years ago at a conference I was at. And she said that what she tells her clients is, I can't live your life. I'm not in your life with you every day. So what can we work on today that's going to make the biggest difference in your life at this point? And I've used that so many times with clients because it brings them back to the present and it gets them thinking about what's important right now instead of all the swirling stuff that's going on in their heads.
Nicely said. Yep. Nicely said.
And I just wanted to say too, I can't help but make mention of this, because this has been a document that's really been helping me and helping my clients. But I've been diving into an ebook called Curious Accountability, and it was written by Cameron Gott and Casey Moore. And it's so clear. And there are 3 conversations that they lead you through with your clients that are had, you know, ongoing. But both that first conversation of accountability and then moving through the duration of the partnership, it's an excellent document and well worth it. So if that's something that piques your curiosity, it's a great resource.
Andrea, could you please, there's been a request for you to repeat what you took away from Barbara Luther at that one conference. Would you mind restating that?
I wouldn't mind a bit. What Barbara said is, I'm not living your life. I can't know what's going on in your life right now. What can we do today that's going to make the biggest difference in your life?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And also, just if people still haven't gotten that, just know that right now, ACO is in the transition process of transitioning from their old website, which is close to impossible to use, to a new website, which will be much more user-friendly. Have a calendar, you can quickly click a link, click a program offering, and it will take you right to the link to sign up and everything. So it's going to be 100% better. And also, the last 6 months of recordings from ACO Case Collaborations will be up there. So hopefully within 2 weeks or so, you'll have full access to this recording. All right, Michelle, did you still have something? Okay.
Yeah, let's move on to the next slide. So we've kind of broken it down. I'm looking at our time too. Yep. We're cutting it kind of close. So I have one question then, just to kind of shortcut things. So to the more experienced clients or coaches on the call, I'm wondering if you have some, perhaps some lessons you learned the hard way about what to make sure to include when you're discussing logistics and expectations at that outset, those initial conversations with your client. Maybe some things that you had kind of overlooked and then later went, ooh, yeah, I really need to explicitly make sure that that's in the agreement, both written and discussed. So maybe we can learn from each other's lessons. Joanna put a question in the comment that she'd love to hear how people handle no-shows. Do they charge their clients? Any insight on that? And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what Melanie just put in the chat. She's still trying to figure out how to handle it when a client starts ghosting instead of clearly discussing a break.
Andrea has her hand raised.
I'll just keep talking today.
Yeah, that's good.
You get burned enough, and yes, you start to charge for when they don't show up. So most clients get one shot. So you have that one time, and then if it happens again, then they pretty much just know it. And they'll just say, I have to cancel. There's an emergency. You can charge me. I get it. And with the ghosting thing, I think all you can do is I do like a 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. So I will text them, I will call them, I will try to approach them in any way I am able to. And then at some point it becomes, you know what, something's happened in their life and I don't know what it is, but they're not interested in coaching right now. And every once in a while they'll come back. It's only happened a few times, but I've had them come back before and they're like, you know, my life, one woman, her husband had died. I had no way of knowing that.
Right.
So there are reasons in their lives, but we're one part of their life. And we can be something that's very sort of transitory. So maybe there's something that rolls on through. Yeah. So I don't beat yourself up on it too much, but I think it's important to try to track them down because that's part of the coaching agreement. At the beginning, you should be saying, what do you want me to do when you don't show up? Because it's going to happen.
Right, right. Yeah.
I think that proactive thing right in the beginning, saying, you know, what happens if, you know, how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah. And, you know, Andrea, I just wanted to piggyback on that. One thing I used to get caught up in that, okay, they're not showing, you know, is it me? Is it me? One thing that really helped me was that shift to, wow, this was the part of their life I was meant to be on the journey with them. And now they're continuing on with the rest of their journey, and seeing it more as a gift, like maybe I was only meant to be there for, you know, this number of sessions, and not taking that personally. And that was a huge turning point for me. So I just wanted to share that, if that could be of help for anybody else. And so I'm just going to go back. Michelle said that she does what Andrea does, but always feels a little bit harder with a college student. When do you tell the parents who are paying? And for me personally, I'll answer that. And usually I write that right into the agreement, my coaching agreement. There is a section on confidentiality, but then we'll handwrite in, like, if my child misses X number of coaching sessions, then I have the right to call, you know, the parent and let them know. So that's, I think, one way to handle it. I don't know if anybody else handles that a different way. And Adela also said, ask up front, you know, what do I do if you don't show up? Do I have permission to call your parents? Yep. Other people have asked, how many sessions in advance do you ask for a payment? Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Emery, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just noticing that there are some questions regarding payments too. So maybe I'll just read them out loud, and then we can open it up for people's comments on any of those.
Yep.
So Dale was asking, do people take credit card information? And if so, when? So I'm wondering if, Dale, if you mean at the very beginning of the coaching relationship. And Adela says she takes payment ahead of time. And Adele, if I remember correctly, I think you have longer packages and you offer the option for people to pay for the entire kit and caboodle. If you wanted to speak to...
I do. I have a 3-month coaching package. And so they pay the full amount up front. And if that doesn't work with their budget, then they can pay month to month, but then the total is a little more. So that's...
So
at least they've at least paid for a month.
Yeah.
Upfront.
Right. And upfront, right. I think a lot of coaches, if you're paying month to month or a package, always ask for the payment ahead of time versus after the fact.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Krista, I see your hand is up.
For cancellations, I think it's so important that as an industry that we remember that we're a business, because I think that if we don't treat ourselves as a business, that our clients are not going to treat us as a business. I think that's really important to kind of have that persona. And then second of all, this past year we've developed, we do an hour of virtual office hours every week. And what's really nice is when you get the package, anybody can come to those hours, you know, at any time, so they can always attend. But in lieu of cancellations, that's the availability that I have. So if they have to cancel for some reason, then they're welcome to come to office hours. So that's how I work it.
Awesome. Thank you. Ruth, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I do ask for a payment of 1 month up front, and that can continue for quite a while, or I can get a little bit more relaxed when I feel like I see a lot of evidence that this is a person who doesn't have a lot of difficulty with the timing of payments and so on. And lately I've started using Venmo, and found that particularly for young adults, that's a very familiar form of payment, and it's super fast, and it just shows up immediately, and it was really easy to set up. So particularly my just a year or two out of college students tend to find that very familiar and easy to use. I just saw the message from Brooke. I don't use business Venmo, I just use personal Venmo. I may need to switch over to that as my business expands, but right now my private clients are fairly small number, so. I don't get charged anything, no.
Thank you, Ruth.
If we can just quickly go to the next slide, I think we can take maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 quick shares on this. So when you have that first coaching or early coaching sessions, depending on how you do this with your clients, how do you help your client identify their larger objectives or goals for coaching, like why they came in the first place? Are there certain tools that you use to help with this? Joanna says she uses the life wheel. It gives a good overall perspective. Brooke uses that too. I find that's good for the clients who come in who are really just like, okay, I've heard that ADHD coaching can help with some of my challenges, but I don't really, there's so much that I'm challenged by, I just don't know where to focus. Yeah, so Brooke says, especially when they're stuck. So for some though, I've found that it can be overwhelming, and I've had to be really careful about who I choose to use that with.
Krista, do you still have your hand raised? No, okay.
Okay. And Brooke has like a reflection question on the payment. She said, do you separate the intake payment from the monthly payment? Any insight on that from people?
I do. Mm-hmm.
And is that because your intake is like a standalone and it sits, is it a little bit longer than your regular sessions?
Yes, for me it's an hour and a half, so I do a separate payment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also was wondering, like, I used to include it all together, so it would be, the first month it would be more expensive than every other month, but then I realized that could scare people, so I just separated it. But also now that it's separated, it gives people more of the ability to cancel after the intake, so it's like that catch-22.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Melanie said there seems to be a lot of energy around discussing payment policies, wondering if this could be a topic for future discussions. And you know, absolutely. You know, I think this would be a great, if we could get more volunteers. So I'm putting a plug out for volunteers. We would love to start kind of this business branch of the program's offering. So that would be a super topic. For the case collaborations, it has to be kind of meet the ICF standards. So we couldn't do just one on payment through the case collaborations, but you know, through just ACO, yes, we could do that if people are interested.
Mm-hmm. So the next slide is just about getting the weekly coaching agreement, like the per session, and I think that's pretty easily covered. A lot of schools have their own acronyms that they help their client or their students work through, like TOMS or TOSCA. But you know, what's your topic? What outcome do you want? How will we measure it? What's the significance of this to you at this time? Those sorts of questions. So let's just move quickly past that, because I do want to just bring this up quickly before our time wraps up. Don't lose the forest for the trees. So this is about that balance between those larger overarching goals that a client sets at the beginning of the coaching partnership. And then it can be easy to get caught up in the session topics brought in by the client every week and lose sight of tracking progress on the larger goal. So knowing that ADHD can make an impact here, are there any tools that you use to keep those larger goals, you know, in sight and in mind, to kind of mark progress on those, to keep them as part of the coaching conversation when those smaller crises and fires to put out come along the way?
Anne-Marie, this is Christine. I'm just going to jump in quick, and then I'm going to jump to Nancy. I have a friend, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me sharing this. She kind of does coaches students, and so she does like almost a me poster, like a mind map all about me, and the goals are on that, and she has that posted so that the kids can always see it during their sessions as a way to keep kind of those goals in the forefront. But I want to jump to Nancy because she had her hand raised. Unmute her. Nancy, are you there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Oh my God, I've had a devil of a time just trying to get in whatever to the meeting. No, not because of you guys, because of my phone. And so I so desperately wanted to hear the session. One of the things that I do is I have the clients. I'll speak quickly because I know the time is running out, and or maybe I'll slow down if I'm going to speak too fast. But I have people just print out, you know, a paper-sized month by month calendar, you know, just anything, and have them put it up on the wall. Because if it's a size of a piece of paper month by month, you know, like January, February, March, April, whatever, any way that you put it on a wall, if it's 3 by 4 or 4 by 3, it makes a square of some sort. And then I have them just basically X out each day of each month as it goes along. And I found that this really helps people. You know, now with this, you can have a sidebar along the whole year calendar that says, you know, goal by this time, or goal, you know, March goal, June goal, whatever. You can do it that way too. But the whole point is that as each week goes by, then each month goes by, you see, you can see yourself in time and space. And that's one thing that clients with ADD have such a hard time with, is kind of measuring themselves in time and space. And not only that, but it helps them see time passing, you know, not only day by day, week by week, but month by month. And so from a lower level, as they knock off each day, you know, they think, okay, what's the consequence of the decisions or the actions that I did or didn't make today? And then when you back way up and kind of look at it from an eagle view, you can then see the passing of time. Like, let's say it were June right now, you know, or August. If you look at all those 1 month blocks with all X's in it into one big box, I'm not making any sense, I'm sorry, then you would only see September, October, November, December, like without any X's in them. You know what I mean? Like that creates a very powerful visual. So it's kind of, not only is it like a domino dropping with the X for each day, but then the month, it's, does anyone understand what I just said?
Yeah, that's great. So
that helps people kind of like on the lower level, but especially the bigger level. What, that much time has passed, and I thought that I was going to do that by this time. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Okay, I'll unmute myself, or I'll mute myself, sorry.
Thanks so much, Nancy.
But you make a really good point, Nancy, about visualizing the time and seeing yourself in time and space, and how your actions match that too. So that's wonderful. And just to quickly wrap up on this part, and then we'll do our closing word. Melanie mentions that periodically she has a forest conversation, like at the beginning of the year, a new season, new semester, just to check back in and see where are we at with these bigger goals. Rebecca says every 2 or 3 sessions, she reads back over with them the goals the client has set and checks in with them about whether they think we're moving appropriately toward the goals. Joanna says, if it seems we're off track from the larger agenda, I'll ask how the topic today serves the overall goal.
Yep. And yes, Kristen, as soon as that new website is up and going, this recording will be posted so that you can access it once you log in as a member. Yes.
Okay,
and thank you, Andrea, for sharing that link for Cam and Casey's book with the promo code CAM to get a $5 discount for ACO members. So
Yeah.
I just want to hop in quickly and just give the closing word, and then Anne-Marie, if you needed a final minute, that's great. But the closing word is together, TOGETHER. So please submit those, the opening and the closing word, to cceu@adhdcoaches.org. Again, the closing word is together. Emery, did you have a final thought before?
No, that was really it.
Okay, awesome. So just a quick reminder that the next case collaboration will be powerful questioning and direct communication with students, followed by April's case collaboration of powerful questioning and direct communication with adults. Don't also forget to hop onto the ACO website for the link for the research programs joint venture, talking about Dr. Russell Barkley's latest research. That's next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And again, if you have other ideas generated from this topic today or any other topics that you would like to see as future programs, please feel free to send that when you send your opening and closing word, because we're always interested to find out what you would find most helpful. Anne-Marie, anything else?
Just some gratitude to everyone here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it's just so, I don't know, it seems like it's a luxurious thing to be able to gather together as professionals and talk, being really effective for our clients.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you very, very much. We'll see everybody, hopefully we'll see some of you next Wednesday, and then we'll see some of you back March and back in April. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you.